Olivia Knight sat in the dim glow of her office lamp, staring at the case files spread across her desk. Her fingers traced the edges of the photographs scattered around the room, each one telling the same story. Someone vanished without a trace, leaving nothing behind but confusion and heartache. Each case was personal to Olivia, but this one gnawed at her in a way the others hadn't. She wasn't sure why, but it had a familiar shadow lurking beneath it. The missing individuals weren't connected at first glance. Different backgrounds, different circumstances. But Olivia had seen this before. A pattern buried just under the surface, waiting for someone to piece it together. And that someone, as always, was her. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, a reminder of the time slipping away with every unsolved day. She leaned back in her chair, the soft creak of the leather breaking the silence. The latest case was no different from the others. A woman, early 30s, gone without a trace. She had been last seen at a quaint cafe near the coast, the kind of place where no one expected anything bad to happen. Yet here Olivia was, staring at her photo, wondering how this woman could simply disappear. Olivia's phone buzzed on the desk, pulling her out of her thoughts. She picked it up and saw a message from her partner, Thomas. "Find anything yet?" It read. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. "Not much, just a lot of dead ends." She sent the message and sighed. It wasn't like her to feel defeated, but this case was different. The woman had vanished without a single clue. No signs of struggle. No witnesses. She stood up, stretching her tired limbs, and grabbed her jacket from the back of the chair. She needed air, needed to clear her mind. The city was quiet as she stepped outside, the fog rolling in from the harbor, giving the streets a surreal, ghostly feel. Olivia pulled her jacket tighter around her, feeling the cool dampness settle on her skin. As she walked, her mind wandered back to the case. Something didn't sit right with her. Disappearances happened, sure, but they didn't happen like this. Not without some kind of reason. She turned the corner and found herself outside the cafe where the woman had last been seen. The glow from inside was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the chill outside. Olivia pushed open the door, the soft chime of the bell announcing her entrance. The place was quiet. A few patrons scattered at tables, sipping coffee and chatting quietly. She took a seat at the table where the woman had last been seen, her eyes scanning the room for anything that felt out of place. But nothing stood out. It was just a regular cafe, with regular people going about their day. Olivia pulled out her notebook and jotted down a few thoughts. There had to be something here, something she was missing. The missing woman had been here. Someone had seen her. Olivia just had to figure out who. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her attention back. It was another message from Thomas. "Got something. You should come back." Olivia's pulse quickened. Finally, a lead. She left a few bills on the table and hurried out of the cafe, the cold air hitting her as she stepped back onto the street. Her thoughts raced as she made her way back to the bureau. Whatever Thomas had found, she hoped it would be the break they needed. The bureau was quiet when Olivia arrived. The usual hustle and bustle of agents and staff reduced to a few late-night workers typing away at their desks. She found Thomas in his office, leaning over a desk filled with papers and photographs. He looked up as she entered, his face serious. "Take a look at this," he said, handing her a torn letter. "We found it at the scene." Olivia examined the letter, her brow furrowing as she tried to make out the words. Most of it was illegible, the edges frayed and worn. But one phrase stood out clearly. They know. Olivia's heart sank. This wasn't just a random disappearance. This was something bigger. "Where did you find this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the growing dread in her stomach. "At the woman's house," Thomas replied. "It was hidden under a stack of old newspapers in her office." Olivia sat down, the weight of the situation settling in. "They know," the phrase echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder that someone out there was watching. This wasn't just a missing persons case. This was a message. "We need to figure out who they are," Olivia said, her mind already racing through the possibilities. "Whoever it is, they're connected to these disappearances." Thomas nodded. "I've been looking into some of the woman's connections. She worked for a non-profit, mostly doing community outreach. Nothing that would attract this kind of attention, though." Olivia frowned. "It doesn't make sense. Why would someone target her? What did she know?" "We're missing something," Thomas said. "There's a piece of the puzzle we're not seeing." Olivia leaned back in her chair, staring at the letter in her hand. She had a feeling this was just the beginning. There were more people involved, more secrets to uncover, and the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it would become. The next few days were a blur of interviews, phone calls, and dead ends. Olivia and Thomas worked tirelessly, trying to piece together the woman's last moments before she disappeared. But every lead seemed to evaporate as soon as they followed it. It wasn't until they interviewed a co-worker of the woman's that they finally caught a break. The co-worker, a nervous woman in her late 20s, had been reluctant to talk at first. But after some gentle persuasion from Olivia, she finally opened up. "I don't know if this means anything," the woman said, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "But a few days before she disappeared, she got a phone call. It really upset her. She didn't say much about it, just that someone was asking questions." Olivia's heart raced. "What kind of questions?" "I don't know," the woman replied. "But she was scared. She wouldn't tell me who called, just that it was someone from her past." Olivia exchanged a glance with Thomas. This was it, the missing piece they had been looking for. "Did she say anything else?" Olivia pressed. The woman shook her head. "No, that's all I know." "I'm sorry." Olivia thanked her and left, her mind racing. Someone from the woman's past had called her, someone who had made her scared enough to disappear. But who? Back at the bureau, Olivia and Thomas pored over the woman's records, trying to find any connection to her past that might explain what was happening. It was slow, painstaking work, but Olivia was determined. She wasn't going to let this case slip through her fingers. It wasn't until late one night, long after most of the bureau had gone home, that Olivia found the connection. She had been combing through old records, digging deeper into the woman's life, when she stumbled across something unusual. The woman had been involved in a lawsuit several years ago, a lawsuit against a powerful corporation. Olivia's pulse quickened as she read through the details. The corporation had been accused of covering up illegal activities, but the case had been settled quietly, with no one admitting guilt. Olivia leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This was it. The woman had known something that had put her life in danger. And now, she was gone. She picked up the phone and dialed Thomas. "I found something," she said when he answered. "I think I know why she disappeared." The next day, Olivia and Thomas met at the cafe near the bureau. It was early, the morning sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk as they sat at a small table in the corner. I looked into the corporation, Olivia said, her voice low. They've been involved in some shady business for years. The woman must have known something, and they made sure she disappeared before she could talk. Thomas frowned. But why now? The lawsuit was years ago. Olivia shook her head. I don't know, but something must have changed. Maybe she was planning to come forward with new information. As they spoke, Olivia noticed a man watching them from across the street. He was leaning against a lamppost, his eyes fixed on them. Olivia's instincts kicked in, and she knew immediately that something wasn't right. We need to leave, she said quietly, standing up and motioning for Thomas to follow her. They left the cafe and started walking down the street, but the man followed them. Olivia's heart raced as she quickened her pace, trying to lose him in the crowd. But no matter how fast they walked, the man was always just a few steps behind. Finally, they ducked into an alley, hoping to lose him. But when they turned the corner, the man was waiting for them. Olivia Knight, he said, his voice cold. You're in over your head. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the man blocking their path. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his dark eyes gleamed with a dangerous intensity. Thomas stepped forward, trying to position himself between Olivia and the stranger. What do you want? Olivia demanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. The man smirked, taking a step closer. It's not about what I want, Miss Knight. It's about what you're digging into. His eyes flicked toward Thomas, sizing him up. You're getting too close to something that doesn't concern you. Olivia squared her shoulders, refusing to back down. If it didn't concern me, you wouldn't be here threatening us. The man's smirk faded. This is a warning. Stop looking into the corporation. Walk away, and no one else has to disappear. Olivia clenched her fists, her mind racing through the possibilities. The woman wasn't just missing. She was likely dead. And now, this man was here to ensure Olivia stopped before she uncovered too much. Who are you working for? Olivia asked, her voice low and dangerous. The man chuckled, shaking his head. You won't find out by asking questions. He took a step closer, his hand resting inside his coat, as if reaching for something. But keep pushing, and you'll regret it. Thomas's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm, his body tense and ready to act. Olivia's eyes never left the man's face. You don't scare me, Olivia said, her voice ice cold. The man held her gaze for a moment longer, before turning and walking away, disappearing into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared. Olivia and Thomas stood frozen for a few moments, the tension still thick in the air. Finally, Thomas let out a breath. What the hell was that? A warning, Olivia replied, her mind racing. But now we know we're onto something. They wouldn't send someone to intimidate us if we weren't close. Thomas nodded, still visibly shaken. So what's the next move? Olivia glanced down the street, where the man had disappeared, her jaw set with determination. We keep going. We find out who's behind this. The encounter only fueled Olivia's determination. Whoever that man was, he had confirmed what she had already suspected. They were getting too close to the truth. Over the next few days, Olivia and Thomas threw themselves deeper into the investigation, piecing together more of the puzzle. The corporation had its hands in a lot of dirty deals, and the missing woman had been at the center of one of the most damning cases against them. Olivia discovered that the woman had been in contact with a whistleblower, a former employee of the corporation, who had been gathering evidence of their illegal activities. But before she could go public with the information, she had disappeared. As Olivia dug deeper, she uncovered more troubling details. The corporation had ties to several powerful individuals, including local politicians and law enforcement officers. The corruption ran deep, and it was becoming increasingly clear that they would do anything to keep their secrets hidden. One night, as Olivia sat at her desk, poring over documents, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Thomas. "Got something big. Meet me at the safe house." Olivia's pulse quickened. The safe house was their designated spot for high-risk meetings, a secluded location where they could talk freely without fear of being overheard or tracked. If Thomas wanted to meet there, it meant he had found something serious. Grabbing her jacket, Olivia left her apartment and headed for the safe house. The streets were quiet, the city bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. As she drove, her mind raced through the possibilities. What had Thomas found? Could it be the evidence they needed to take down the corporation? When she arrived at the safe house, Thomas was already there, standing by the window, looking out into the night. He turned as she entered, his face grim. "What is it?" Olivia asked, closing the door behind her. Thomas handed her a folder. "I think this is what we've been looking for. It's a list of payments, bribes, really, made to several officials. It's all here. The politicians, the law enforcement officers, even the judge who presided over the woman's lawsuit." Olivia's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. This was it. The smoking gun. The evidence that tied everything together. With this, they could take down the corporation and everyone involved in the cover-up. "This is huge," Olivia said, her voice filled with excitement. "We need to get this to the Bureau immediately." But Thomas shook his head. "We can't trust anyone there. Not until we know who's on our side." Olivia paused, realizing he was right. The corruption ran deep, and they couldn't afford to make a mistake. If the wrong person got wind of this, it could all go up in smoke. "So what do we do?" Olivia asked, her mind racing. "We need to go public," Thomas said. "If we release this to the media, they won't be able to bury it. We need to expose them." Over the next few days, Olivia and Thomas worked tirelessly to prepare for the media release. They had to be careful. If the corporation caught wind of what they were planning, they would stop at nothing to silence them. Olivia reached out to a trusted journalist, someone she knew wouldn't be swayed by money or threats. They arranged a meeting in a discreet location, far from prying eyes. The day of the meeting arrived, and Olivia felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it. This was the moment they had been working toward. If they could pull this off, the corporation would fall, and justice would be served. As Olivia and Thomas waited for the journalist to arrive, they kept a careful watch on their surroundings. Every car that passed, every pedestrian that walked by, felt like a potential threat. Finally, the journalist arrived, a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She took a seat at the table, her expression serious. "So, what have you got for me?" she asked. Olivia handed her the folder, her heart racing. The journalist flipped through the documents, her eyes widening as she realized the magnitude of what she was holding. "This is explosive," the journalist said, her voice filled with awe. "This could bring down half the city." "That's the plan," Thomas replied, his voice steady. The journalist nodded, tucking the folder into her bag. "I'll get this out as soon as possible, but you two need to be careful. They won't go down without a fight." As the days passed, Olivia and Thomas kept a low profile, waiting for the media storm to hit. But as the tension mounted, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The corporation hadn't made a move. There were no threats, no attempts to silence them. It was too quiet. Then, one night, Olivia's phone rang. It was the journalist. "They know," the journalist said, her voice filled with panic. "They're coming for you. Get out. Now." Olivia's blood ran cold. She grabbed her gun and raced out of her apartment, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to warn Thomas. They had to get out before it was too late. But as she raced down the street, she saw the flashing lights of police cars surrounding the safe house. Her heart dropped. They were too late. Olivia parked her car a few blocks away and approached the safe house on foot, keeping to the shadows. The scene was chaotic. Police officers swarmed the area, their radios crackling with orders. She spotted Thomas being led out in handcuffs, his face bruised and bloodied. "No," Olivia whispered, her heart sinking. They had been betrayed. She watched from the shadows as Thomas was loaded into the back of a police car. Whoever was pulling the strings had gotten to the police, had framed Thomas for something he didn't do. Olivia's mind raced. She had to act fast. She had to save him. As the police cars pulled away, Olivia followed at a distance, her mind working overtime to figure out her next move. She couldn't trust the police. She couldn't trust anyone. But she couldn't let Thomas go down for something he didn't do. The night stretched on as Olivia tailed the police to the station. She had one shot at this, one chance to expose the truth. But it wasn't going to be easy. The odds were stacked against her, and time was running out. As Olivia watched from the shadows, her mind raced with 1,000 possibilities. She had been here before, in situations that felt impossible, where the walls seemed to be closing in. But she had always found a way out, and she would find a way out of this too. She just needed to be smart. She needed to think 3 steps ahead, because this time she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for Thomas, and she wasn't going to let him down. The final showdown was coming, and Olivia knew that when the dust settled, only one side would come out on top.